Okay, so are you ready to dive deep into fluency today?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one.
I think this is going to be pretty interesting. This is a little bit about gaining fluency in English, you know, building confidence and learning those effective learning habits.
Exactly.
So today we are looking at fluent English, confidence, habits, and practice.
Episode 1, right.
Episode 1, yes. And they really hone in on fluency and confidence in this episode.
Which is so important.
I know. I was really excited to see this. I feel like this is something that I've struggled with, and I know a lot of people out there struggle with.
Yeah.
So they talk about how fluency is more than just knowing the vocabulary, and that's kind of what drew me to this episode. It's also about overcoming that fear of speaking.
Yeah.
It's about establishing those daily habits and really focusing on self-practice. So I'm excited to explore this with you. What do you think?
I think it's going to be great. I think this is something that will really resonate with our listeners.
Yeah.
And, especially even the title, Fluent English. Confidence, habits, and practice. It starts with confidence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't start with, learning the most vocabulary words or, how to write the best sentences.
Yeah.
It's about confidence. And that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of people. Have you ever, felt like you know English,
Oh, all the time.
but then, when you go to speak, you just freeze up?
It's like stage fright, almost. It's really interesting because, you study and you feel like you have a grasp on things.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're in a situation where you need to speak, and it's like your brain just shuts down.
It does. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a lot of different things, but this episode really focuses on, like you said, it's more than just knowing the vocabulary. It's being comfortable with making mistakes and just, letting go.
Yeah.
Not being so self-conscious. It's sort of like, and they talk about this in the episode, like playing an instrument or a sport.
Yeah.
You can know how to play all the notes or you can know all the rules of the game, but until you get out there and you practice, until you get comfortable with it, you're never going to be fluent.
Yeah, and like what you were saying about stage fright, I think that fear of speaking is a huge part of that.
Oh,
right.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that, you think hold people back from being more fluent in English?
I think one of the big things, and they kind of touch on this in the episode too, is the fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to sound silly. You don't want people to judge you.
Right.
I think also sometimes it's just like a lack of confidence in general.
Yeah.
Not feeling like your English is good enough to actually have a conversation.
Right.
So I think it's definitely a confidence thing and definitely a fear thing as well.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that fear. And the episode, one of the things it suggests is really figuring out the why behind your fear. What is it specifically that scares you about speaking English? Did that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. I thought that was a really, really interesting point. It's kind of like sometimes when you're afraid of the dark, it helps if you just turn on the light, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's just a shadow. So it's kind of like that with fear, I think, when it comes to language learning.
Right.
You have to sort of shine a light on it, write down what are you specifically afraid of?
Right.
Are you afraid of mispronouncing a word and people laughing at you?
Yeah.
Are you afraid of not being able to find the right word?
Yeah.
And just sort of analyze it, break it down? Because I think a lot of times fear is really just this big amorphous blog.
Right.
But when you actually start to pick it apart, you realize it's not as scary as you thought it was.
Right.
And so that was, I thought, a really valuable takeaway from the episode.
Yeah, totally. So, okay, we've tackled the fear factor a little bit. We're kind of confronting that. But what actions can we actually take?
Right.
What daily habits does the episode suggest to actually improve fluency?
So one other thing that I thought was really, really interesting was the idea of passive versus active learning.
Okay.
And they talk about how, a lot of times we're engaging in passive learning, which is kind of like, listening to music in the background.
Okay.
It's good, it's exposure, but you're not really actively engaging with it.
Gotcha.
Active learning is more like playing an instrument yourself.
Okay.
You're really getting in there and you're practicing.
Right. So that's like, if I'm listening to a podcast,
Right.
that would be passive.
That would be more passive, yeah. You're listening, which is great. It's good for exposure. It's good for getting used to the sounds of the language.
Yeah.
But to really become fluent, you need to actively engage. And they gave a great example in the episode.
Okay.
They talked about instead of just watching a movie, try shadowing the actors.
Shadowing, okay.
Repeating their lines out loud.
Oh, okay.
So you're actually using your mouth, you're using your muscles. It might feel a little weird at first,
Yeah.
but they say it's like a workout for your tongue.
Okay.
So you're really getting in there and you're practicing the sounds and you're practicing the rhythm of the language.
I like that. A workout for your tongue.
Yeah,
I've never thought about it that way before.
right.
But I like shadowing. I've dabbled in that before. I like that.
Yeah.
What other things do they suggest for self-practice?
Oh, this one I thought was a little bit, I don't know. It was interesting.
Okay.
It might be weird for some people,
Okay.
but they recommend having conversations with yourself,
What?
like full-blown conversations with yourself.
Like talking to myself
Yes, like in the mirror.
in the mirror. Like I've lost it.
Well, not necessarily in the mirror, but, just like talking to yourself.
Okay.
And they say it's called self-talk, and it's actually a really great way to practice fluency without any pressure because nobody's listening.
Oh.
It's just you.
Okay.
So you can experiment with different phrases.
Right.
You can work on your pronunciation. You can get comfortable expressing yourself in English without that fear of judgment.
I see. I see. So did it convince you that talking to myself would actually be helpful?
I think it can be. And they made a good point in the episode. They said, when you're talking to yourself, you're not worried about making mistakes.
Right.
You're not worried about what other people think. You can just let go and be yourself and practice, practice, practice.
Right. Yeah.
So I think, maybe give it a try. You might be surprised at how helpful it can be.
I will try it. I'll give it a shot.
See what happens.
So it really seems like it all comes down to, those consistent efforts, whether it's shadowing, whether it's self-talk, just making those little efforts each day really compounds.
Exactly. And that's one of the big things that the episode was really emphasizing is, it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about being consistent. It's about doing a little bit every day.
Yeah, it's about the journey.
Yeah, and making it a habit, building those habits into your daily routine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. Well, this deep dive has been really enlightening. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this was great.
It's a good one.
I think it's a really good topic for people who are learning English.
So for all of our listeners out there, what's one small habit from this episode that you'll commit to trying this week to really help boost your English fluency? Leave us a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, fluency is a journey.
Not a destination.
Enjoy the ride. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.